This is the Less Insurance Dependence podcast show with my good friend Gary Takas and myself, Narain Arul Raja.
We appreciate your listenership, your time, and most of all, we appreciate your intention to reduce insurance dependence in your practice. Our goal is to provide information that will help you successfully reduce insurance dependence and convert your practice into a thriving and profitable dental practice that provides you with personal, professional, and financial satisfaction.
Well, welcome to the Less Insurance Dependence podcast, your trusted source for insights, strategies, and expert advice to elevate your dental practice and career. I'm Michael Walker, your co-host, and I'm thrilled to bring you another value-packed episode with an industry expert. Today, I'm joined by a special guest, Brian Colao, one of the nation's leading experts on dental law, transitions, and DSO strategy. As the director of the Dental Service Organization's Industry Group at Dykema, Brian has spent years helping practice owners navigate complex legal landscapes while building more profitable, independent, and future-ready practices. In today's episode, we'll be diving into the legal and strategic factors dentists must consider as they reduce their dependence on PPOs, prepare for growth, and ultimately take more control over their financial future. Brian will walk us through how insurance participation affects practice value and transition readiness, walk us through legal implications of dropping PPO plans, strategic ways to align your business model with long-term goals like exit planning or DSO partnerships. And finally, his top advice for dentists who want to reduce insurance dependence without unnecessary risk. That's a good idea. Brian, it is great to have you here. Thank you so much for taking the time, and thank you for being part of our podcast.
Well, thanks, Michael. It's really a pleasure and honor to be here, and I appreciate your making time for me on your podcast.
Well, we know your background, and we're just talking. There's a lot of moving parts these days, and this whole insurance is a big one, and we're hearing more and more conversations around that. So it's perfectly timed to have you with us. And so I've got some questions set up here. So let me go ahead and start off with our first one. And the first question I have is, you've worked with a wide range of dental practices and DSOs. From your legal and strategic perspective, how does heavy reliance on insurance impact the long-term value and flexibility of a practice?
I mean, it can, harm the value in some situations. And I'll tell you why. I mean, look at the situation we're in right now. Really, really tricky. We have, record inflation. Inflation is at a level we haven't seen, in 25, 30 years. Right now, cost of goods, we haven't seen it in 25 or 30 years at the level it is right now. Cost of labor is very, very high with some of the, tariffs and trade wars going on. The cost of goods may go up even further. And the reason this is relevant is because the reimbursement rates are not going up very much at all or staying the same. So you have this sort of unnatural situation where prices are going in a normal business. I always say this, even the plumber, you call the plumber and tell him you want to come, to your house, and the cost of fuel goes up. The plumber says, hey, I'm sorry, there's going to be a $25 fuel surcharge. I just have to do it. Or, the cost of copper pipes has gone up. So I'm sorry, my rate for a house, for a house call that used to be $100 is now $125. Sorry about that. And the plumber ends up in the end of the day, okay, because they raised prices. Here in dentistry, we're in an unnatural state of affairs. Costs are going up in the form of the cost of goods, in the form of the cost of labor, in the form of the cost to service your debt because interest rates are up, and the reimbursement rates, you're lucky if you get a couple percentage points. Hey, great job, congratulations. It's going up 3% or 2%. You're getting almost nothing. Many reimbursement rates stay the same year over year for a while. Others go up a tiny amount, but not nearly enough to offset the increased cost. So think of it like this. I mean, EBITDA earnings before interest, taxes, depreciation is the gold standard for valuing practices and dental organizations. And if you're, you were used to, I'm going to use silly numbers, Michael, that don't make sense. If, your costs were $500 and your revenue was $1,000 and you're used to having $500 of EBITDA, but now your costs are $700 and, your revenue is either 1,000 or let's just say it's 1,050 or just a little bit, all of a sudden your EBITDA that used to be 500 is now 350. And that will affect the value of your organization. And it could affect it substantially. So it's not every situation. I certainly don't want to go on your podcast and tell everybody if you take insurance, you're going to go bankrupt or something. You're not. But being heavily dependent on insurance reimbursement rates or even government programs like Medicaid or other things creates this unnatural state of affairs where expenses go up, but your reimbursement rate stays the same or only goes up a little bit and not enough to offset the cost. And that does over time erode your value.
Yeah, what a great way to break that down, Brian. You remind me of, I used to own a chain of flower shops. And don't ask me how I got into that, but that's quite a story. It involves a past marriage. I'll leave it at that. But the interesting thing was that we had in that business, we essentially had the equivalent where we had wire services. So people would order their flowers from another city to our city, and we would fill the order, and then we'd send it out, and they took a 20% premium for every order off that. So, but I've got an order that's booked, and I have to put it out the door at a price point that makes sense, relevant, but I have to match a design. I can't scrimp. I can't do half a filling, so to speak, or I can't do less than a professional job. We still have to do it. But we really looked at it and we said, our big exercise was, we know that it balances out our purchasing cycles with raw goods, raw materials, and how much is the right percent to give us a balance, plus to put us in front of people that gives us a market that we're pursuing and we're intentionally going after. So we made it very much so to me, it's like, don't put your eggs in all one basket sort of thing. And there's benefit to it. And like for us, that we were able to position ourselves to do more high ticket items, big weddings, big events and things like that we wouldn't have otherwise necessarily had access to. It would have taken longer to get there, I guess we'd say. So I think to me, as I heard you say, I said the other question I would have is, what can you, if you can't get more money from the insurance company, how can you buy better, reduce your inventory costs, whatever is available? But from what I understand, Brian, that's very difficult to do in your field.
Yeah, you can do it, but you get one chance at it. Like I always say, you can't cut your way to profitability, right?
Yeah,
you can go through everything one time. You can say, look, I haven't looked at this in 10 years, so let me go through one time. And you might in the short term. I mean, I would say if somebody's listening to this that's a practice owner and you haven't looked at it in 10 or 15 years, you need to look at it because you are going to find some valuable stuff the first time you go through. But after you run through one time and make some cuts and do some things, you're kind of stuck at that point. It's not the sort of thing that you can repeatedly go through and just keep cuttings. And some people, if you're running a lean and mean operation already, then there may not really be an opportunity for you to cut anything. And, you're going to be stuck possibly if you're 100% reliant on insurance in this unnatural state of affairs where costs and expenses go up and the reimbursement rate stays the same or only goes up a little bit. And over time, 5-10 years, your EBITDA is going to go down if you don't make changes to that. Now, there's things you can do. You can introduce new lines of business for new revenue. You can leverage technology and increase your same store growth. You can integrate specialty to add to the revenue. You can do those things. But if we were just saying everything just stays the same and we're reliant on insurance, the numbers are going to go down.
Yeah, exactly. Thank you. I think I was thinking the concept of an airplane. It has flying at an altitude of 30,000 feet, and it has to have at least a 1/10 of 1 degree attitude up, or eventually it's going to crash.
Yeah,
and it's that 1/10 of upward that we have, and when you are fixed in this, and you don't look at that. And as you say, and I'm sure that's something that you see and you do, is help companies look at those things, look at what are the potential, what are the possibilities you can look at to make those shifts. And based on what we just talked about, if I'm listening to something, okay, so I might just think about dropping some PPOs. So the next question I have for you is, what are the legal or contractual challenges practice owners should consider when they do start dropping PPOs or renegotiating, now it's an interesting concept, or renegotiating insurance agreements?
Yeah, I mean, okay, you have to understand what's in your provider agreement first and foremost, and you got to get a copy of it. I've got lots of clients and people I work with that say, "Oh, I've been with XYZ, payer company." I'm not going to name particular names on the show, but I've been with this company for years, and they just pay us. I'm like, "What do they pay you?" "Oh, I don't know, whatever they pay us." "Well, what does your agreement say?" "Oh, I don't know. Do we got a copy around here? How do we get?" I don't even know. Or I'm representing somebody and they're selling their organization and somebody wants to buy it. And they're like, "Hey, as part of diligence, they've asked us for all of our, provider agreements with payers." "Oh, we don't know where they are." Well, if you find yourself in that situation, you better get it and you better go through it. Because the first step is, I would not counsel anybody to contemplate canceling anything or renegotiating it until you know what your rights are. You need to read the thing top to bottom. And if you struggle or maybe don't understand it, you can get with a lawyer or a consultant or somebody, and maybe they can help you read it and explain it to you. But one way or the other, either on your own or through the help of an advisor or a consultant, you need to understand everything that's in there, what you have to do to terminate. I mean, you don't want to, suddenly tell them, "Hey, we're canceling it this week," if the contract says you got to give 6 months notice or something. You need to understand exactly what your notice provisions are, exactly how you would go about, terminating the contract if that's what you wanted. If you wanted to do, you need to understand how they can terminate it. If you start renegotiating with them and they don't like what you have to say, what could they do back to you? You need to understand all of that stuff. And when you have a good understanding of that, you can either, cancel something if that makes sense for you, or you can, renegotiate from a position of strength because you understand, what all your contractual rights are under the existing arrangement. The last thing is purely a business. You need to, if you don't know, and there's another thing, Michael, I ask people, "What's your payer mix?" "Well, I don't know." If you don't know, you need to tell me, and we're going to use silly numbers again. If you got 100 patients, you need to tell me how many are on XYZ, how many are on ABC, how many are on EFG. Like, you need to know exactly. So if you look at something and you're like, "God, I hate these folks. They're not paying us hardly anything." "Oh, they're only 0.5% of our business. All right, we're canceling that right now." Or you look at something and you're like, "Look, I don't like what's going on here, but they're 54% of our business. We better tread lightly here until we get a backup plan in place." So you really need to, at a granular molecular level, understand exactly what your payer mix is, and then also understand what your rights are and what their rights are. And once you have a clear picture, you can figure out what makes sense for you and how to go about it.
Yeah, that was so incredible. Again, it's that need, knowing your background. It's interesting I see a lot I spend a lot of time in the dental world, in the vet professionals, dental professionals, and as well as medical professionals. And there is a common thread that I find when it comes to what you just said, is most of those professionals are accidental entrepreneurs. And they don't look at the contract. They don't go through. That's not their passion. There's people that are passionate about that they love details and they love the numbers and they love to crunch them, and they thrive on it. They're usually energized by stuff rather than people, and that's a great place for them.
Yeah, Michael, you're from Canada, so I'm going to use an analogy that I know you can understand. Okay, I wouldn't use this for everybody, but I feel like this one will hit for you. Okay, the dental industry, and you're talking about vets too. A lot of healthcare right now, they got caught in a line change. I know what you know what that means up in Canada. You get caught in a line change because everything was going one way, and then all of a sudden you wanted to put a line on the ice, and maybe you didn't get out there quick enough, and oh my God, somebody had a breakaway and they scored a goal that normally wouldn't have happened. Well, that's what we find ourselves in dentistry. Everything operated one way for a long, long time, and then all of a sudden, almost overnight, around June of 22 and shortly shortly thereafter, the interest rates doubled and tripled, and inflation hit rates that it hadn't hit for 30 years ago. I mean, I was around in 1978 with my lawn mowing cutting business when I go to all the neighbors and cut their lawns. And I remember interest was like 12, 13%. So, if I had $100, I got $12, $13 on that at the end of the year. You had $1,000, you got $120, $130. That was good money when you're like 14. But, now we're seeing these rates that unless you were around in 1978, and a lot of the dentists and DSOs, they weren't around. They didn't see this. And now you're seeing it. So it's a line change. We got caught in a line change here. And to your point that you were making earlier, back in the old environment, before this sudden change of everything, you could be successful despite yourself. You could say, look, I went to dental school. I don't know anything about business, but I know I just take out a loan, open up this practice. People will come. I'll take whatever insurance pays me. And somehow at the end of the year, there's going to be a pretty decent amount of money there. And that's what's going to work. Those days are over. Now you've got to fundamentally understand the business of dentistry, understand your expenses, understand where your revenue comes from, what it is in terms of reimbursement rates, and make necessary adjustments. Otherwise, you're going to get caught in a line change.
I love it. What a great analogy. That's so true. And just for the record, maybe next year the Toronto Maple Leafs will go win the Stanley Cup.
I was up there, Michael, at the Women in DSO conference, staying right up at the Ritz-Carlton, right across there, and all those hopeful fans were walking by me, and they, it didn't end very well for them. And I was up there seeing some of it unfold around me.
Well, it's the good news is with Canadians generally we generally don't have major riots over disappointment, but we do have grumpy faces. So yeah. You're talking about this idea of knowing what you're going into to make a decision and have know the numbers and stuff. What I do mostly is I'm a professional mediator, and so we always talk about having your your best alternative to a negotiated agreement, right? And knowing that gives you a place of power, and knows what is the Kenny Rogers, know when to hold and know when to fold. And it's just about, to your point, kind of everything we're talking about is built either bringing in to support you the business acumen you need, or learning it yourself. But there needs, to your point, if you haven't done that since 2022 with the shift in the market, then you're probably feeling very frustrated, maybe even overwhelmed, or wondering where to turn to. So Brian, you're giving us some great tips and direction to sort of think this thing through differently. And I'm pretty sure that the podcast listeners are appreciating that. And so that's going to take me to one of my favorite words, transition. And so for any dentists sort of considering future transitions, so they're looking maybe at mergers or acquisitions or DSO partnerships, how does insurance participation affect deal terms and buyer interest?
Well, only in that it can affect your EBITDA. Okay. EBITDA is the gold standard. You're going to get paid a multiple of EBITDA. Those that don't know this, the reason we use EBITDA as the gold standard for, practices and groups is, you go to a dental conference and somebody's got a 1 million practice and somebody's got a 2 million practice. And this is true. I see it all the time. The 1 million practice costs $600,000 to operate. What's their EBITDA? $400,000. The $2 million practice costs $1.8 million to operate. What's their EBITDA? $200,000. What have we learned? The $1 million practice is twice as valuable as the $2 million practice. So this is why we use EBITDA. That's why we do this. So if you're heavily reliant on insurance, it's going to affect your EBITDA potentially, and it could affect your ultimate valuation. I mean, no one is not going to do a deal because you take insurance. It's so commonplace in the United States and the way we do it. And it's coming to Canada too with that program you guys are rolling out. You guys are welcome to the party of unhappiness. You can't wait. You guys are finally gonna join the pity party or the unhappiness. But anyway, down here in the U.S., usually there's almost no one that's not gonna buy an office because you take insurance. That's the way it is. But if it's lowering your EBITDA, it's gonna lower the ultimate purchase price that you get, and that's not terrific.
No, absolutely not. And I can see, that's so funny you mentioned that. It's funny, I was just at the dentist the other day and I noticed a sign that said that we we are accepting a limited number of whatever, I can't remember what the acronym is for the program.
Yeah.
But I thought, isn't that interesting? I hadn't even thought about it. I said, yeah, we're joining the party of unhappiness. I like that.
Because when we talked about that at the Women in DSO meeting in Toronto, it was very much on everybody's mind. It's like the Canadian, I can't remember the acronym.
Canadian Dental Program or something, but
something like that. But what they're saying is the expectation of a lot of the patients is going to be that the practice is going to have to apply for that, and they just want to get treatment and they're leaving. And good luck to the practice to get reimbursed. And that's where I said, welcome to the pity party, because once you start trying to get reimbursement, what you think and what you get often are two different things. So that, it's the way of the world, I guess. But yeah, the question of yours is, to the extent it affects your EBITDA negatively, it's going to affect your purchase price. But, the overwhelming majority of practices in the United States take some form of insurance. So it's certainly not going to stop a transaction from happening. But that's why we tell everybody, you got to do a checkup. If you think you're going to make a transition in 6 months, a year, 2 years, now's the time to evaluate all your payer sources, everything we were talking about earlier. Should we cancel some insurances? Should we make some adjustments? Should we renegotiate things? Because anything you can do to boost or increase your EBITDA in the next, like, let's say you're going to sell in 2 years or something, anything you can do in the next 2 years to boost your EBITDA is going to boost your purchase price, boost your enterprise value.
Yeah, and you just mentioned something interesting. I just did a podcast the other day with an AI quote unquote expert, and we're talking about the benefits in the dental realm. One of the things we talked about was specifically how AI. One of the challenges of claims not getting paid out or being returned incorrect or improper or incomplete or whatever. And they're using in the platform they're actually able, AI is actually telling based on what's treatment's happening, the person that has the treatment, what's going on. Excuse me if I'm not using the right terminology, but essentially kind of pre-screening the content and then actually knowing where that's got to go and setting up the actual documents that almost make it like it's going to Bob at a desk in some company with a chocolate bar sort of attitude, that it's like it cleans up the routing. So to your point, there's things in-house we can do to clean up our actual insurance revenues or improve them, which to your point will help improve that EBITDA, as well as make it more attractive. It's almost like, I would guess there's some companies that are just better to work with than others, and I'm wondering on that. That's kind of a side thought. Is that true? And is there some process for you to kind of, if you're going to keep and I agree, keeping a percent of insurance, and it's foundational, and in my experience, it helped me build a business faster than I wouldn't have otherwise. So, but is there, what would be the kind of the test thresholds that you might want to look at to figure out what would be the best firms to hang on to or work with?
Yeah, I mean, two points there. The first one is artificial intelligence is the single biggest advancement in the history of the dental industry, and how it pertains to our insurance discussion. One, it helps you diagnose more cases ethically because diagnostic AI can catch things that the naked eye might miss, so you can do more cases. Two, it stops the insurance company from denying your claims, because if the AI agrees and concurs that there's a cavity there, there's like an objective second set of eyes on it. And then the third thing it can do is the AI can help you submit your claims so they're 100% accurate. Human beings are perfectly imperfect, Michael, as you know, and we're going to make mistakes on
other
things.
than us. We are, but that's
maybe we're good. We're having fun today, but human beings are perfectly imperfect, and no matter how hard you try, if you do 1,000 claims, you're going to have some errors in there. But the AI doesn't make mistakes. I mean, unless it's malfunctioning at a fundamental, but the AI does not make mistakes. If it says, hey, for this claim to be approved by the insurance company, these 7 17 things have to be checked and I've been programmed, it will never submit a claim that doesn't have all 17 of those things, sort of checked on it. And it can also auto adjudicate claims where it goes with the carrier and gets auto approvals. So, AI really can help, with all this stuff. But your other question is, what is the threshold for evaluating insurance? Yeah, you got to look at the reimbursement rates. The answer is kind of simple on that. If something is giving you way below market reimbursement rates, I'll give you an example. And this is a true case that happens. If you have to pay due to a staff shortage, as we do all the time in the United States, $85 an hour for a hygienist, but insurance is reimbursing $40 an hour for a cleaning. It's okay now and then if you have to do it, but if that is your core business all the time, you're going to lose money. And if instead the insurance company reimburses at $100 and it costs you $85 an hour, at least you're making some profit in there. So, you got to look at the reimbursement rates and look at your cost of labor and your overhead and see if it makes sense. There are situations, Michael, as you pointed out, where if you have capacity, you could say, look, rather than us just sitting empty on these days, at least we're breaking even, or we're only losing 10% instead of 100%. You can make some decisions like that if you have to. But if you're in a situation where it's literally like our reimbursement rate's $40 and it's costing us $100 for this hour, you really got to reevaluate whether you don't eliminate that somehow.
Yeah. That's, you say it so much more professionally and eloquently than I do. Thank you, Brian.
Well, I hope I'm adding some value here.
You are.
It's nice to be here with you. I hope.
And the fact that you recognized our national sport and didn't make fun of the fact that we can't seem to win. But that's a whole other story. Let's go in. I got a question for you, kind of as we get close to wrapping up here, Brian. What advice would you give to practice owners who are ready to take control of their revenue model, which is what we've been talking about, and getting the knowledge and all the things we've been talking about, but taking control of their revenue model, but want to do it with minimal legal or operational risk?
Okay, so the first thing, this was a cliche from the 70s or 80s. You're old enough to remember it. Remember the old knowledge is power. Little thing on Saturday morning with the cartoons, knowledge is power. It's true. You've got no business changing anything about your operation until you understand your operation, until you've gone top to bottom, evaluated everything, all the things we talked about earlier on the podcast, where all your revenue's coming from, what's the highest percentage, what's the reimbursement rates, what's your right under the provider agreement, what's the payer's right under the provider agreement. When you know all that, then you can say, all right, at this point in time, let me sort of evaluate where we are. And I think what you got to do is the first thing is educate yourself on all that stuff, understand your rights and where all your revenue's coming from. And then you can start to make judgments. Some of them might be easy. Hey, that insurance company that's 0.5% of our business is paying us $40 when it costs us $100. Cut them right out of here. There's no point. It's not going to hurt our business. We can fill 0.5% of our business from somewhere else. Let's go do that. Things might just start obvious, low-hanging fruit on the tree might start to just be obvious once you have information. If you don't have information, then things become much more confusing. What I tell, clients when I'm advising them, Michael, is you want to be a caveman or a weatherman. Remember, like the caveman, they came out, you might not have been there, but remember they came out of their cave and they're like, oh, wow, it's raining today. Oh, gosh, it's hot today. Oh, it's cold today. It looks like a storm. There's a storm happened, and they don't know. It's just like they walk out and whatever life hands them is what they take. Today, we have weather satellites that say, oh, no, it's going to be, 92 degrees. It's going to rain. There's a severe thunderstorm warning. Oh, it's going to be cold. This is going to happen. So you can plan ahead. And to do that, you had to launch into outer space, a satellite to look at everything. Well, create your own control center for your practice. Too many people are flying blind. They don't know. If I start asking them questions, what is your EBITDA? I don't know. What is your total revenue? Oh, I don't know. How many insurances do you take? I don't know. Where are your provider agreements? I don't know. What percent of your revenue is with each insurance company? Oh, wow. I'm kind of confused at that. What is your overhead? Tell me all your labor and cost. What is it? If you're confused by all of these questions, you better build out about your control center, because if you don't have the answers to these questions, you're more like a caveman. You're just whatever life delivers is what you're going to take. You don't know. Versus if you've got the answers to all these things, you can start to make really intelligent decisions.
Well, you just pretty much summarized up all the key elements we've been talking about. And I was thinking, if you go from the caveman to the weatherman to a Formula One racing driver, the one thing they have is a very complex dashboard on their steering wheel. But if you think about that control center, that monitors everything about it. That, we've kind of advanced, but it's interesting too. I think we're talking about being more aware of information about your business, the flow of information, the cost, the revenues, all the different ratios that are important to this to a dental practice directly. But it's not an annual event. It needs to be something that's regular, that's part of your. And I think that's sometimes you leave it too long, and then it's I don't know where to even start.
There's technologies that'll give this to you, Michael, in real time. If you're using the modern PMS systems, if you're using other things that will sort of give you KPIs, key performance indicators, you used to have to wait 30 days to get it. You get it that day. Like that day, you can figure out, hey, where are we? What's going on today? You click on it and it's right there, and you can make decisions, in real time. So that's the other thing, leveraging technology. I mean, we then talked a little bit about that, but that's critical to all of this.
Yeah, that exactly. So the argument is, emotionally, it might feel like it's overwhelming, and your amygdala is telling you that it should be, but the world's moved on from the caveman area, and it's into the weatherman and into moving a lot faster. So I think one of the big takeaways for me, Brian, as I've heard this today, is being intentional with understanding where I've been, understanding where I am at, and having a picture of where I'd like to go, and then reverse engineering that back. And I kind of hear it, and being intentional with the parts, moving part. Clearly, unless you're an expert in all this, then you're probably going to need to reach out with someone like Brian and get some support to help with this. This is it's tough to be an expert in everything. It's better to be I always like, with my coaching clients, I like to say, we're going to take 80% of you and focus it on the 20% of what you're great at. And and how do we help dentists do that? And I think this conversation has really helped give a perspective on the broad context, but also pull it down to there's some next right steps that have come out of this. Doing one thing differently. Where are you going to start? How are you going to start reducing insurance and dependence? What do you need to look at before you start putting that into motion? Brian, thank you.
Look, I'm starting to do some teaching in dental schools, and what I teach is the business of dentistry. I can't help anybody fill a cavity. I don't have a dental license, but I can teach people about the business of dentistry. And, on the first day of class, I sometimes ask the students, how many courses have you taken on negotiating with a landlord? None. How many have you taken on ordering the supplies and equipment? None. How many have you taken on negotiating with payers? None. How many, have you taken on being human resources, hiring and firing and, giving raises to employees? None. And, so you don't got to feel bad. If you're listening to this and you're like, oh my God, this is overwhelming, I don't know anything about it, you can get help. And you shouldn't feel bad. You went to dental school to learn how to be a world-class clinician. You didn't learn all these business things, although we're starting to incorporate it now. But, back in the day, that wasn't part of the program. So it's okay that you don't know all these things. But we can help you if you're willing to, to basically spend the time and the effort, you can get help for all these things and you can become good at it.
That would be great at it. Absolutely. So we're parallel in that, Brian, is that I coach people on communication, conflict resolution, and change, and really focus on that people side and those difficult conversations, those money conversations, all those things. That's just not that's not their field of expertise, and they didn't go to school for it. So, Brian, we have run out of time.
Oh, I was having fun. I was just starting to have fun. Now it's over with.
I know, that's it. Well, that's what, you left the line wide open there that I can't go to, but thank you so much, Brian, for joining us today and sharing your powerful insights on legal strategy, transitions, and the financial impact of insurance participation. Certainly your experience and clear advice are incredibly valuable for our listeners, especially those looking to build thriving independent practices. As always, we say this podcast is about taking action. That's clearly what Brian has been talking about. And 2025 can be your year of transformation. If you're ready to move beyond PPOs, here are 2 steps you can take right now. First, if you're looking to attract more high-quality patients and grow your practice organically, I encourage you to schedule a complimentary marketing strategy meeting with Equa Marketing. Their team will show you exactly how to build a reliable, insurance-free patient flow through strong local SEO, search engine optimizations. It's all the digital platform. Visit lessinsurancedependence.com /marketing-strategy-meeting to book yours. Now, I can tell you where you're picking up this podcast. There'll be a hot link for that, so you'll be able to grab that there, but at lessinsurancedependence.com /marketing-strategy-meeting to book yours. Second, if you want hands-on guidance to create a profitable fee-for-service model, you can book a complimentary coaching strategy meeting with Gary Takas. Gary has helped thousands of dentists across the country reduce insurance dependence and grow true practice freedom. I love that term. Visit thrivingdentist.com /CSM to learn more. And Brian, if people want to get a hold of you, how would they do that?
Yeah, you can reach me. All my information is at dykemadso.com, DYKEMADSO.com. And you can get, how to get me, email, phone, it's all there. And, one other thing I'd say is we've got an industry leading DSO conference coming up August 6th through the 8th in Denver, Colorado. And details can be found at DykemaDSO.com. It's not too late. It's going to be sold out, but anybody that hears this that wants to attend, come on down to Denver and we'd love to see you.
Awesome. That's good to hear, Brian. When is that? August
6th through the 8th this summer, coming right up, 2025, August 6th through the 8th in Denver, Colorado at the Gaylord Rocky Mountain Resort right by the Denver airport.
Yeah, I know where that is exactly. And the Broncos might be playing at home. So if you found today's episode helpful, please share it with a colleague or friend. Together we can help more dentists take control of their practices and their future. I always like to say it's important that, we're trying to help Brian here today is trying to help set you up for success. This is a great opportunity for you to help others set them up for success. Thank you again for joining us today, Brian. It's been awesome. And I certainly look forward to meeting with all of our listeners. I hope you'll come back to our next podcast on the Less Insurance Dependence podcast. But until then, keep moving toward a thriving, independent practice. On behalf of Brian, until next time, we'll look forward to seeing you.